The soul of a modern shut-in drifted through the endless void before waking in a body that felt heavy and new. Suddenly, the blinding lights of a grand chandelier forced his tiny newborn eyes to squint in discomfort. A tall man with a golden crown stood over the baby, holding a glowing crystal orb to measure the child's potential. The crystal flickered weakly, displaying a digit that caused the king's face to contort with immediate disgust. The queen turned her back on the infant, claiming that a child with such pathetic magic could never be part of the royal bloodline. Little did they know, the measurement device had glitched because the baby's power was too massive to be registered. Orders were whispered in the shadows to dispose of the disappointment in the most dangerous territory of the kingdom. The carriage rattled over rocky paths as it approached the borders of the forbidden forest. Without a second thought, the knight dropped the swaddled baby onto the damp forest floor and rode away. Reinhardt looked up at the towering trees, realizing he was now a level 2 infant alone in a world of monsters. He focused his mind, drawing upon the vast well of mana he had brought with him from his past life. With a simple thought, he constructed an invisible barrier cube to protect himself from the biting cold. Deep within the thicket, a pair of glowing red eyes locked onto the small source of heat. The legendary wolf Fenris emerged from the shadows, her massive frame dwarfing the infant entirely. She bared her fangs, preparing to devour the tiny human who dared to enter her territory. Reinhardt didn't cry, instead choosing to expand his barrier with a sudden burst of overwhelming force. The impact of the magic sent the SS rank monster tumbling backward into the ancient oaks. Fenris regained her footing, realizing this was no ordinary human child standing before her. Reinhardt used his barrier magic to create a physical weight, pinning the great wolf to the ground. Recognizing the sheer dominance of his mana, the legendary beast lowered her head in a gesture of absolute surrender. In a flash of light, the giant wolf transformed into a beautiful woman with silver hair and wolf ears. She knelt before the baby, swearing her eternal loyalty to the one who had bested her. With a powerful guardian now by his side, the infant Reinhardt drifted into a peaceful sleep. Fenris spent the night keeping watch, her eyes scanning the darkness for any lesser demons. By morning, a group of high-ranking knights, led by the noble Goldzin, approached the clearing on horseback. Goldzin halted his horse, staring in disbelief at the silver wolf protecting a human child. He drew his sword slowly, unsure if the beast was a threat or a miraculous savior. Fenris growled softly, but Reinhardt stirred and sent a calming wave of mana through the air. Realizing the child was special, Goldzin dismounted and knelt to pick up the abandoned prince. He declared that he would raise this boy as his own son, giving him the name Haru. The journey back to the Goldzin estate was filled with the sounds of laughter and clopping hooves. Upon arrival, the lady of the house greeted them with tears of joy, embracing the new addition to their family. Years passed in the quiet luxury of the countryside, where Haru grew up hidden from the royal court. He spent his days in the library, mastering ancient spells that no one else in the world could comprehend. Haru made sure to keep his true power level hidden, always appearing as a mediocre student to the public. Fenris, now in her human form named Flay, acted as his personal maid and hidden bodyguard. She trained him in the arts of combat, teaching him how to move with the agility of a predator. Haru's little sister Charlotte followed him everywhere, admiring her big brother's quiet kindness. However, rumors of a child with level 2 magic surviving the forest began to reach the capital. The queen, hearing these tales, narrowed her eyes and summoned her most ruthless assassins. Back at the manor, Haru felt a sudden shift in the mana around the perimeter of the estate. Dark silhouettes landed silently on the rooftops, their blades coated in a paralyzing venom. Flay bared her fangs in the kitchen, sensing the bloodlust of the approaching intruders. Haru sighed, knowing that his peaceful life of leisure was about to come to a violent end. He stepped out into the night air, the space around him warping as he prepared his first offensive spell. The lead assassin lunged forward, only to be stopped mid-air by a crushing wall of absolute force. Haru whispered a single word, and the barrier imploded, sending the attacker flying into the distance. As more assassins emerged from the trees, Haru realized they weren't just after him, but his family as well. A massive magical circle began to glow beneath the entire estate, indicating a high-level destruction spell was being cast. Haru looked toward the capital, seeing a giant floating eye watching the carnage from afar. 9 years have passed since the floating eye vanished from the horizon, leaving Haruto to grow in the quiet safety of the Golden household. Now a teenager, Haruto spends his days feigning a lack of interest in magic to keep his true power a complete secret from the world. His younger sister Charlotte frequently bursts into his room, determined to uncover why her brother is so strangely disconnected from their peers. Little does she know that her brother spends his nights in the forest, training the massive wolf Fenris, who has become his most loyal guardian. Reports of imperial movements near the border have reached the Golden territory, threatening the peace Haruto has worked so hard to maintain. Haruto senses a group of elite assassins crossing the magical perimeter he established around the family estate. He dons his heavy ebony armor, transforming into the nameless warrior known to local legends as the Black Knight. With a single flick of his wrist, he summons a barrier cube that instantly teleports him to the edge of the woods. The assassins move with unnatural speed through the undergrowth, their blades coated in a dark, shimmering venom. Haruto appears silently in their path, his presence radiating an overwhelming amount of raw magical pressure. One of the invaders attempts to cast a high-level fire spell, but the flames simply dissipate against Haruto's passive defenses. From a hidden distance, Charlotte watches the encounter, her eyes widening at the sheer power displayed by this mysterious savior. Haruto raises his hand, and dozens of light spears materialize in the air, aiming directly at the paralyzed assassins. Instead of killing them, he uses his barrier magic to construct a prison that suppresses their ability to cast any spells. With the threat contained, Haruto commands Fenris to guard the captives until the local militia can find them. He notices Charlotte's scent nearby, and realizes he must leave immediately before she connects the dots. Moments later, Haruto is back in his bed, pretending to be fast asleep when his sister eventually returns to the mansion. The next morning, Charlotte watches her brother closely during breakfast, trying to find any sign of the warrior she saw in the woods. Haruto decides he needs to expand his influence to protect the family more effectively, so he visits the hidden monster village he helped establish. Goblins and orcs greet him with deep bows, seeing him not as a human, but as their sovereign and protector. He meets with the village elders to discuss the growing instability in the empire and the need for better reconnaissance. A messenger bird arrives, carrying a formal summons from the Royal Academy of Magic in the capital city. Haruto realizes that his father has likely pulled strings to get him enrolled, despite his public level 2 status. Leading the territory would mean leaving his family vulnerable, a risk he is not willing to take lightly. He decides to create an automated barrier system that will shield the entire Golden estate while he is away at school. The process consumes a massive amount of mana, causing the sky to flicker with phantom stars for several minutes. Charlotte finds him later, resting in the garden, and demands to know why the sky was glowing like a festival. He tells her it was probably just a rare atmospheric phenomenon, but her suspicious pout suggests she isn't buying the lie. As the day of departure approaches, Haruto gives Fenris strict orders to protect Charlotte at all costs. The silver wolf lets out a low howl of affirmation, her eyes glowing with intelligence and predatory focus. Haruto's adoptive father presents him with a new set of clothes and a sword, unaware that his son could shatter the blade with a thought. Saying goodbye to his family is harder than he expected, especially seeing the hidden tears in Charlotte's eyes. During the journey to the capital, Haruto notices that the roads are heavily patrolled by Imperial soldiers with cold, empty expressions. He uses his detection magic to scan the soldiers and discovers that many of them are under a subtle form of mind control. This confirms that the royal family is hiding something much darker than simple political ambition. Upon arriving at the capital, the sheer scale of the city and its magical infrastructure is a stark contrast to his quiet forest life. He catches sight of the royal palace, the place where he was discarded like trash all those years ago. Haruto enters the academy grounds, immediately drawing attention for his plain appearance and low magical registration. A group of high-ranking noble students blocks his path, led by a boy who looks strikingly like the prince who replaced him. Haruto simply walks past them, his mind focused on finding a way to get expelled before he accidentally kills someone. Suddenly, his magical sense triggers a massive warning as he feels a familiar malevolent presence nearby. Far above the academy tower, the giant floating eye from 9 years ago slowly blinks open, staring directly down at him. Haruto realizes that his secret might already be known to the very people he is trying to avoid. A shadow falls over the entire campus as the eye begins to pulse with a dark rhythmic light. Haruto reaches for his magic, but for the first time in his life, his barriers feel like they are being dissolved by an outside force. Haruto quickly realizes that the strange sensation of his barriers dissolving was merely a sophisticated mana drain trap set by the border guards. He grumbles as he is ushered toward the Royal Academy, realizing his dream of a quiet life is officially over. During the entrance exam, Haruto decides to purposefully fail by outputting the lowest amount of magic possible. However, the ancient testing stone explodes because even his minimum is far beyond the device's capacity. The professors immediately label him a once-in-a-generation genius, much to his absolute horror. A cheerful dragon girl named Liza approaches him, claiming she can sense a dragon-like power radiating from his soul. Haruto tries to play the role of a shut-in, but the student council president, Iris, demands he join their elite training squad. While wandering the library at night, Haruto detects a familiar, foul magical signature beneath the floorboards. He realizes the queen has embedded cultist agents within the faculty to harvest student mana. When an army of shadow demons attacks the school during the annual festival, Haruto knows he can no longer hide. He slips away into an alleyway and summons his iconic Black Knight armor with a single thought. The Black Knight appears in the center of the courtyard, crushing a high-level demon under his boot. He deploys a massive barrier that encapsulates the entire campus, preventing any more enemies from entering. Haruto tracks the mana source to the headmaster's office, where a cult leader is performing a ritual. The cultist laughs, claiming that no human can break through the queen's eternal curse protecting him. Haruto simply taps the barrier with a finger, causing it to shatter like thin glass. Seeing his master's magic defeated so easily, the cultist tries to flee into the shadow realm. Haruto reaches into the shadows and pulls the villain back out by his collar. With the threat contained, Haruto erases the memories of the bystanders to keep his secret identity safe. He returns to his dorm, hoping he can finally get some sleep before the next day's classes. The next morning, he discovers that the queen herself is visiting the academy to investigate the incident. Queen Giselot scans the crowd, looking for the one who dared to interfere with her plans. Her eyes linger on Haruto for a moment, sensing a strange familiarity in his presence. She moves on, dismissing him as the same weak child she abandoned years ago. Haruto decides that the only way to protect his new family is to remove the queen from power permanently. He coordinates with his sister Charlotte and his monster allies to launch a coordinated strike on the palace. Fenris howls in delight at the prospect of finally fighting a worthy opponent. The assault begins with a series of magical explosions that disable the city's defense towers. Haruto walks through the main palace gates, his Black Knight armor reflecting the fire of the burning sky. The queen's elite guard rushes forward, but they are frozen in place by Haruto's gravitational magic. Finally, he enters the throne room where Giselot awaits with her ultimate weapon, a summoned ancient deity. Haruto sighs, noting that the deity's power level is still lower than his casual morning workout. He unleashes a hyper barrier that compresses the deity into a tiny marble of energy. The queen falls to her knees, realizing she has been fighting her own son all along. Haruto removes his helmet, showing his face to the woman who abandoned him to die. He tells her that he has no interest in her throne, only in the peace of his friends. Instead of killing her, he strips her of her magic and banishes her to the very forest where he was left. With the queen gone, the kingdom begins to heal under the guidance of Haruto's foster family. Haruto returns home to find Charlotte and Fenris waiting for him with a massive feast. He leans back in his chair, finally realizing that he doesn't need to be the strongest to be happy. The legendary shut-in has finally found the one thing magic couldn't create, a place where he truly belongs.